F. Kennedy Jr. is on Capitol Hill trying to gain approval from Republican lawmakers. Kennedy has drawn criticism for some of his controversial stances on health policy and vaccines. So joining us now this morning, Bill Wirtz.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so first up, RFK faces a tall task trying to win over these GOP senators. What sort of things does he need to convince them of?
Well, he's definitely the nominee that has the steepest uphill battle because having been a Democrat for all his life, he now needs to actually convince Republicans that he is the right pick here and that he is in line with the agenda of Donald Trump. Donald Trump was elected on the base that the government does too much. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy try to slim down the government and make it more efficient, but he has always been a big government guy. He wants more regulation. So that's really going to be a tough sell for a lot of the Republican senators on the Hill.
And just yesterday, President-elect Trump told reporters that Kennedy would be much less radical than a lot of people are thinking. What do you make of those comments that the President-elect made?
I think Donald Trump tries to signal ultimately to RFK that he needs to quiet down on some of the proposals, because ultimately, if you look at sort of how the election was decided, it was decided based on the grocery store prices. It's essentially grocery store elections, groceries being too expensive, so we want food to become cheaper, but also the idea that the government gets too involved in your lives and that we should get the government out of it. But here's a guy who thinks that we should ban food dyes in Fruit Loops, who thinks that the coloring of your food, even though it's not unhealthy, should be regulated more. And I think that's a really tough sell for lawmakers there, because getting into the nitty-gritty of what the color of our food should be, I don't really think that represents what Donald Trump was elected on. So I think Donald Trump tries to signal ultimately to Robert Kennedy that there are some things that people like about him. Ultimately, the idea of making Americans healthier is not a bad one, but a lot of the regulatory changes that he wants to make are based on theories that RFK believes and that some of his supporters have believed, but are not necessarily based in fact. And I think the Republican senators do care a lot about what the scientific agencies do. I think the idea that all the agencies are corrupt and we need to change everything, I don't think that's really in line with the establishment Republicans.
Well, and Kennedy has been widely criticized by health experts for his controversial policies, suggesting removing fluoride from the water and anti-vaccination rhetoric. What can he say to senators about these ideas?
Oh, that's the toughest one, because he definitely sounds very convinced about those ideas, and he's actually doubled down since Donald Trump has announced his nomination, tweeting about removing fluoride from water. I will just remind the audience that this is a really bad idea. In Europe, this is not common at all to have fluoride in water, and Europeans actually face significantly more tooth decay, and dental care experts do say that this is a good idea and should be maintained. So he's seen as a conspiracy theorist. He's bought into most conspiracy theories. I mean, he thinks that microwaves are bad for you and Wi-Fi gives you leaky brain. All of these theories. Is he actually going to implement those? Is he going to get the agencies to go along with it? How many people does he have to fire to replace them with activists that agree with him? I think this is a really fundamental question here, and definitely one that will come up in those nominations. So I don't think just a couple of meetings are going to solve all of those questions. He's been at it for the last 2 decades, and there's a lot of things he has to answer for.
All right. Well, Bill Wirtz, thank you so much for joining us this morning on DC News Now.